Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas, and today, I apologize for the fuzzy audio, if there is any fuzzy audio. We're doing this via Zoom because we have a three-way conversation going here, but it should be good enough for you guys to decipher what's going on. Today, I have a couple really great friends, Dr. Craig Spodak and Dr. Peter Boulden from the Bulletproof Practice Podcast, and today I wanted to get them on. They are multiple time visitors of the podcast and co-hosts of the podcast. Today, I wanted to have them on specifically to talk about their brand new book, The Bulletproof Practice. I got an advance copy. I was stoked. Peter Bolden signed the inside of it for me. I put that up on social media, and it's been one of the highlights of Q4 for me this year. So how you gents doing today?
Awesome, bro. Awesome. Really
Great.
good.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks for having us on, buddy.
Yeah, of course. This is very cool because we're doing a Zoom kind of video thing, and I'm looking up at Craig right now. He's in a short sleeves t-shirt on the balcony of something with palm trees in the background. Peter is sitting in his study, it looks like, with a lake in the background. And I am in the dungeon of my sound studio here in Prescott, Arizona, and it is 28 degrees outside right now for me. So I don't know who's got the best deal going on.
I didn't
Yeah.
either.
I'm up 6,500. Well, my house is 6,500 feet. I'm at 5,400 feet right now. So it snowed a couple days ago. So we're in full
wow.
effect right here. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It does not feel like it looks for you, Craig. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's 79 degrees and balmy, and as you can see, Mark, not to just increase the jealousy factor.
Man. Yeah, that's a nice pool. That's a nice backyard you're showing me there, right there, buddy. I appreciate it. Where are you located, Craig? Tell
I'm
us
in Delray Beach, Florida.
Delray Beach, Florida. And
Yeah.
Peter?
Right now, I'm up in North Georgia, so it's actually really cold. But what you're looking at is I'm at my lake house. I had to come up and do some stuff like winterization stuff. So that's what you're looking at right there. So I wouldn't be too jealous of the temperature. It's pretty cold here.
Right on.
I'm actually kind of warm, so I wouldn't mind a little cooler weather.
What a jerk.
I'm not trying to say that to be a jerk. It's just actually it's been warm here. It was 88 degrees yesterday.
Ah, my goodness. Well, I got back from Costa Rica a couple weeks ago went there for Ashley's wedding, and it was a good 85 to 87 degrees. Perfect
Wow.
temperature, 82 in the ocean, got some surfing in.
Wow.
Oh yeah, the waves are so good.
Oh, so awesome. So the reason that I like listening to you guys' podcast is because you guys have two very different practice realities. Peter, you are a multiple practice owner like I am, although your multiple practice empire is a little bit more fee-for-service and cosmetically based than mine is. Mine's a little bit more working class. We have some Medicare, Medicaid in my offices, and PPO, and some fee-for-service, but yours is a little bit more high-end than mine. But you are a solid multiple practice model. Craig, on the other hand, you are a multi-specialty, I guess I would call large practice, with multi-specialty in one location. So you have huge revenues, but you have your own challenges having a whole ton of staff and multiple dental providers, many of them being specialists. So Peter, a lot of times I feel your pain, but when I hear you guys on your podcast kind of talking about the different challenges that each of you have, it's a very interesting dichotomy to be able to listen to. So let's start with you, Craig. Craig, tell us a little bit about how your mega practice evolved and what it looks like physically and the number of providers and staff that you have there.
Okay, so it was born out of a concept to basically replicate what I had in dental school. I loved having all the different people around, different specialists, and having a lab and stuff like that. So my idea of what dentistry could be was really formed in the dental school days. I just like that camaraderie. I'm a people person, as Peter knows. He knows me well, so I love to be around people. And just being in that, 3 or 4 chair practice that I had with my dad, and maybe 4 or 5 support team and no specialists, just it wasn't as exciting for me. So I had this dream to build a large, iconic physical space that would house all the specialists and GPs and a larger team, so that we could not have to refer patients out. And that's how it was born. And I was fairly adamant about making sure that it was multi-specialty and not just having different disciplines of GPs, like GPs with wider scope. So I wanted to have specialists doing all the specialty care at that time. And that's how it came to be. And I met a friend who introduced me to this really great artist named Michael Singer. And Michael Singer built the building, designed the building for me. It's 13,000 square feet. We've got 45, don't quote me on this because it's always changing, but I think 45 or 48 support team, 10 doctors, fully functional acrylic and ceramic labs, CEREC machines, iTeros, cone beams, oral surgery, perio, prosto, GP, endo, all in one big box.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many generalists in comparison to how many specialists?
Well, we're 6 GPs. That includes myself, and then 1 prosto, 1 endo, 1 oral surgery, 1 perio. But the models, my idea of the models changed over time. I'm a little less adherent to the all procedures must be provided by specialty,
Mm-hmm.
but it winds up, when you have specialists working there, sometimes they're just so darn good at what they do that it dissuades the GPs from taking on certain things.
Yeah.
So, when you have an endodontist there and he uses a microscope, it lifts your own standard up pretty high. If you can't, we all watch each other's work. We all see what each other are doing. So there's some degree of peer pressure in the model.
So there is a noted absence of an orthodontist on staff, and you are one of the nation's top providers of Invisalign clear retainers in your office. Is that an intentional absence of that type of specialty in your office?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So what happened was I was an early adopter of Invisalign. I was actually the first patient treated in Florida. That was back in 1998. I think most of your listeners were in high school at that time, or maybe before that.
Could be.
Yeah, Mark, you were probably in high school at that time.
Yeah, I was in high school, going back to coach junior varsity football at that point in my career. But
so cool.
I graduated in 1989, brother.
Oh, from high school?
Yeah.
Okay, so wow, you're a year older than me. Wow, that's awesome.
Check me out.
I know, check you out. Is this whoever wins loses?
You look much younger than your age. Oh, speaking of, not to go down a rabbit hole, which I'm very famous for doing, but I just got a picture of my high school baseball field, which got leveled by the Southern California fires. Which
man,
just broke my heart because I was not too long ago, I was at my high school in Agoura Hills, California with my son. We took a picture from the high school baseball field where I used to play. So it's like a really awesome picture of me and my son together at my old high school. And I just got a picture from a buddy, and he took a picture of my baseball field while it was still on fire.
Oh, wow.
A couple weeks ago, which is really
that's pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, my sister lives in Thousand Oaks, and I was in Costa Rica at the time, and I saw on the news that there was the shooting, 12 people killed at a country bar in Thousand Oaks, California. So first thing I did is I texted her at 3 o'clock in the morning, her time, and I was like, "You guys okay?" She says, "Yeah, but my niece and nephew are 20 and 19, and they both live in Thousand Oaks. That's a place that they frequent. They happened to not be there that night. 3 of their friends were shot dead in that shooting. And the next day, Thousand Oaks was on fire, and they had to evacuate their home. And that was the same fire where part of my high school burned down, which is a heck of a rabbit hole I went down just because you mentioned high school there, Craig. Sorry about that.
Well, I guess it gives good context to be thankful, and all things give thanks,
Totally.
Because it could be much worse.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of those dentists out there that lost, a lot of dentists that are listening that lost personal property and unfortunately lives and stuff like that from those fires. It's pretty traumatic stuff. It was really, really heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah, terrible stuff. But let's switch gears back again. Sorry about the left turn there. But let's talk again about your Invisalign experience. So you were the very first Invisalign patient in the state of Florida, which is crazy. And 98 was the first. Crazy.
Yeah. That it was 98. I was an early adopter with it. I was treated by a friend of mine, Dr. Michelle Shems, who now practices up in Maine. But no one was a believer in Invisalign in my local area. So patients were asking about it because Invisalign did such a good job of going direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really find anybody to treat it well. And back in 1998, it wasn't a really good product, just with all due respect to Invisalign. It wasn't as robust as it is today. So I started seeing some really good results with it in the early 2000s, but no one in my area was doing it, or I'd send patients for Invisalign and they wind up with braces or doing nothing at all because they didn't want to wear braces. So I said, listen, I might as well just do it myself. And I was a big Spear Study guy, Spear Study Club and Seattle Study Club guy. So I understood my occlusion and got my feet wet with it. And there's a saying that I like, it's in, because I fly planes as well. So I compare this to getting your feet wet in a new specialty. When you start out in something, you have a full bag of luck and an empty bag of experience. And the goal is to fill the bag of luck before the bag of experience, or fill the bag of experience before the bag of luck runs out.
Oh, I love that.
So that's the same in aviation, same in a specialty. You got to get experience. The only way to do it is, volume. So I was able to do a lot of Invisalign and never really got myself in an uncomfortable spot, and then wound up just doing more than all the local orthodontists combined in this area. So that's how it started, and the patients are really happy, and it makes me happy, and it's an easy thing for me. And I've done, I think, 2,400 cases now, or 2,500 cases.
No kidding. Crazy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
No indirect bonding in your office at all, Craig?
Meaning
bands and brackets, traditional ortho, none of that in your office?
No, not really. But I've done some pretty squirrely Invisalign cases. We've done some like canine exposures and stuff like that, but all with clear aligners. I mean, obviously for those, I'll bond on a bracket or a little button or something like that. But no traditional fixed arch wire orthodontics.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, I promise I'm going to get to you, but this is the first time that I've been able to talk to Craig about all this stuff. But
it's fine, bro.
So Craig, a little bit deeper into your model. Peter and I have had this discussion many, many times, and it is, to employ or not to employ, or to bring in-house or not to bring in-house specialists. And the hesitance is often what they expect in compensation, right?
Yeah.
So if we are looking at, the traditional, a great practice with overhead under 55%, and we are compensating a general dentist between 27 and 33%, let's say, of their production. And
sorry,
and it's
I'm so glad, Mark. I gotta say, I'm so glad you're pressing him right now on this. And
go ahead.
Okay, and then your typical, depending on the location and the region of the United States, the typical specialist is going to want 40 to 50% in compensation for their production, as opposed to 27 to 33 for a generalist. Sometimes it could appear that profitability is tough. So if 40, I'm just going by, 6.
No, and I agree with these numbers 100%.
Okay. So if there's 6 GPs and 4 specialists here, and I'm not saying that, the specialists are producing 40% of the revenue, but that could be that could be the case. Maybe they're producing the vast majority of the revenue for your practice. How is the profitability? Because of those factors?
Well, I think that you have to, for me, I looked at having specialty or having a lab, and I never looked at it as a straight profitability play, because obviously it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Is it profitable to have a lab on site, to pay a technician, a good technician, the type of money that he would require, and not have the volume to make him into a profit center? But I believe that, and again, you don't want to base your entire business off of this, but there's certain things that are there's certain segments of your business that may not be profitable, but they allow for other areas to become profitable. And to answer your question very directly, how is the profit lower than it would be if we had all GPs? And my models moved or changed over time from, let's say, historically it was full-time oral surgery,
Mhm.
4 or 5 days a week.
Okay.
So now it's just part-time. And the reason why it's part-time is I want to have the availability for my patients to have their oral surgical needs covered under my roof, because they expect that. And we want it done right, and we want it done in a careful environment, and we don't want them waiting and stuff like that. But we don't want it to be full-time either, because to your point, if it represented 30 or 40% of our revenue, it just doesn't make much sense to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at specialty in some ways as a loss leader, or as a neutral profit, which fuels other segments which are profitable. But then again, you could also argue that if you have, let's say you have a prosthodontist who's an amazing producer, and he can command, because he's so darn good, he can command a fee that's 70% higher than your GP could.
Okay.
So
yeah.
and that happens. There are guys out there that are just really, really good at what they do, and they've built reputations, and they can command higher fees. So if they can command a higher fee and they're paid 10 or 12 points or 15 points higher, you're making money. So
right.
that's I happen to have certain specialists in my office that are like that can charge a lot because they can perform. They can demand that type of fee.
Even with the PPOs allow you to charge a higher fee schedule for specialists. So that offsets some of that.
Well, none of my specialists are on PPOs.
Okay, there you go. So they're all fee for service.
It's hybrid PPO. So the GP may be on a PPO, but then refers up to, let's say, oral surgeon who's out of network. And then, I always say that when you're in network, no one ever says, thank you for being a network. I really appreciate the 40% PPR.
No, they don't. I've never gotten a thank you for that.
Right. But if you're out of network and you're like, look, I charge $1,000 for this, but your in-network fee is $700. And as a courtesy to Dr. Jones, who's in the practice, and I'm going to charge you $700 as well. You'll get a thank you for that. So, but then again, profit has always been my greatest focus. And when Pete and I share our numbers, and Pete and I have a very close friendship, we're always discussing our margins and stuff like that. It's time to focus on stuff like that. At the end of the day, you run a business, and you have a direct responsibility to make sure that you're profitable. I think most dentists overlook that as a responsibility.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for the candid answer there. Dr. Boulden.
Yes, sir.
We're going to talk about a different model now. And this is fascinating to me. I love being able to go upstream to Craig, because he's above me on the screen right now, like literally upstream, versus downstream with you on the Zoom call to talk about a model that I'm much more familiar with, and that's the multiple practice model. Believe me, for all of your challenges, Craig, and Pete and I, as you hear about all the time, we have our share of challenges as well. So if you're talking about 48 team members and 10 docs, I probably have that many or more. I haven't counted lately. I just had 45 people at my house for our Arizona offices, because we had an all-staff meeting, including the doctors. So I feel you. We're dealing with the same number of people, probably close for you as well, Peter, but just in different locations. So sometimes it sounds like
it has strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. So Peter and I look at you often, and we're like, dude, you have potentially 1/10 the overhead because you have one facility, but you would say that's not necessarily true. My revenue is split out over several different locations, as is yours, Peter. So tell us about your model. How many practices do you have now? And how many total clinical chairs does that equal in your empire there in Georgia?
So I still have 4 practices.
Okay.
And so total number of chairs, 6 would be 18, 30, 35. I'm building a 12 operatory practice right now, Mark, that should be done in July. So that'll bring it to 5. I'm building it from scratch, like literally ground up construction. And that will probably, so that'll bring it to, close to 50 chairs.
50 total chairs.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say it. 30. Yeah. Close to 50. So, but you're right. So I have 3 PPO practices and 1 I'm sorry. Sorry, scratch
Yeah,
that.
it's like looking at you like, what the hell?
Three fee for service practice and 1 PPO.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the total number of employees that you have?
I bet you it's probably, I don't have exact, I think it's about 34 maybe right now.
Okay. And how many docs?
9.
Any specialists?
No.
And how much super GP work is happening in your group?
A lot.
A lot.
Greg,
So we got
Greg's
people
been witness to it.
We
go
got people placing implants. We got people doing ortho. We got people
guided surgery,
endo, all that good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's when, Craig, you go, dang, you got general dentists that are getting 30 to 35, I'm assuming, versus specialty fees. But again, you're a fee-for-service practice, so your doctors are doing great, right? If they're producing
correct, yeah, it's 30.
What your numbers are, and they're getting 35% of that. When you factor in your overhead, that's a win-win-win all the way around. Win for the patient, win for you, win for the associate, and nobody is getting exploited. Seems like a great model to me.
Yeah, and Mark, I have to say, I got pretty blessed in the fact that some of the guys that I have doing the surgeries, they've all known each other prior to. They come from training from the surgical programs at the local dental school here, and they're just studs. Honestly, I have no other way to say it. They're just thoroughbreds. They're just kicking ass, and so I just kind of get out of the way. And really, my job at this point is generating, marketing and storyteller marketing to get people into the chair to keep them busy because they love what they do. But some of the stuff they're doing, I mean, they hang out with oral surgeons, they hang out with the specialists in their study clubs and stuff like that. So, that's been my model. And Craig and I talk about the pros and the cons, just like you've kind of alluded to today, because our models are quite different. And sometimes I think we both think that the grass is greener. There's been times on record where I've said, I think history is going to prove you correct, Craig. And I say that to Craig. I think that history will prove you correct in terms of being a dental hospital model versus smaller satellite offices scattered. But I don't know. I don't know. And that's kind of the model that I'm going on. There's more distribution. I'm going for more distribution than consolidation. And it's just hard to think. So I think that sometimes you always question your methodology, right? Like whatever track you're going on, you look over and you see someone's doing it a little bit different and they're succeeding and you're like, shit, am I doing it? Like, is this the path? But like I've always told you in your podcast, like one of my passions is really real estate. And so the way for me the multi-location practice allowed me to incorporate one of my loves, which is real estate. And then it allowed me to place long-term leases in each one of those, that's backed up by my own dental practice. So to me, I really liked that. And I've made that work.
Yeah. We've all heard that McDonald's is in the real estate business, not the hamburger business, right? That's almost cliche at this point.
But that being said, all of my real estate probably doesn't add up to what Craig's practice is worth, the building. Right. Like, so again, you look at like, okay, maybe I have diversification because they're all in different areas, but as an aggregate, maybe it's not as good as having just one monster, So again, I don't think there's one correct path. And I really admire what Craig has done because I think there's a select few dentists who could have put their cojones out there like he did, and done that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's why it's so neat to talk to you guys at one time. I mean, I love speaking to you separately, but just to be able to get the two sides just so quickly, boom, 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 is fun for me. I mean, this is a great conversation. So I'm going to continue down this theme and ask you now, Peter, what's your vision? What is your short, say 3 to 5 year vision? And then when will you be done? People ask me this all the time, and they ask me if my wife asks me this whole notion that doesn't even compute for the entrepreneur, right? Is like, when is enough enough? Like, it's like, that's not what it's all about. It's about the journey, man. It's not about trying to get to some milestone in my head or some 9-figure payday before it's quote unquote enough. Right. I love the journey, and I wouldn't do this if I wasn't super passionate and I didn't love it. But what is your vision for where you want to be in the next 3 to 5, and then at the end of your career when you're ready to walk away from dentistry?
So I'm going to answer the latter half of that. You know, I've had periods where it's looked like I haven't had much to do, and I really hated that. I think you and I talked about that on the balcony in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it really is. It's all about fulfillment. It's not about getting to a monetary goal or per se. Like, it's just, that's not what drives me. I mean, I'd be ignorant to say I don't track it and track it on a daily, but it's really more of the scorecard. And so for me, I like to be busy, Mark, period. I like to be busy. I like to feel like I'm making an impact. I like to feel that I'm leading well. I like to be challenging. I like to be learning. And if I'm not in an environment, meaning, you know, a business owner or a practice owner, then I don't feel like the context would be off a little bit for me. So I see myself. So I'm going to answer the first part of your question. What's my 3-year vision? I'm actually going to keep going as much as I can, meaning that, you know, I'm not going to be belligerent with my expansion and just kind of like do what some people have done and just get as much capital as they can and expand as fast as they can. I want to do it in a controlled rate where I know that the quality of care is delivered the same way. I know that my branding is delivered consistently. You know, if there's a good real estate opportunity or a good demographic study that pops up, I can go into that environment. But I will keep expanding as long as I feel like my team is solid, my culture is solid, and then I'm making practical decisions about why, right? It isn't just because I'm in a frenzy to get more and more and more. Like, right. What is my why? Why am I doing this? And if I'm doing it because I really think it'll serve the people of that community or serve, like, my city needs it or whatever, then I will keep going. But I won't know until I get there. But, but ultimately, Mark, let's be honest, like, one day there has to be a buyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether that buyer becomes all of my doctors that are in my ecosystem, fine, great. Or does that buyer become, a private equity? I don't know. I would tell you, I would prefer to sell fragmented limited partnerships to my doctors as we expand and get bigger and bigger, because I think it's a band of brothers, or the band of brothers and sisters that will accelerate the trajectory of the organization.
Gosh,
so that would be my
true.
preference. I'm not sure that everyone wants to do that, but it's good to have options, right?
Yeah.
And so I have a 20% partner right now. He's amazing. He compliments me. He does all surgical. I do more cosmetic, but he's just a bad dude. Not bad dude. I guess I was trying to say badass without cussing again, but
it's fun.
Bad
butt. He's a bad butt. So, it's just, for me, Mark, I guess I'll just I'll close it just saying that, I'm having fun. I'm feeling fulfilled, and I'm going to keep doing this as long as I still feel those sentiments. Yeah,
I love it. That's great. Isn't that so true though? Like, Craig has already spoken about having his model has changed. His philosophy has changed a bit. Your model and philosophy has changed a bit too. My model and philosophy has changed. I mean, it changes literally year to year. Like, I've gone all the way up to 14 practices, down to 2, back up to 8, down to 6, up to 10, down to 7. And it's like not only does the philosophy change, but my motivations change and my overall vision changes. But right now, it does not sound awesome at all to me to involve myself with private equity at all. Sell to them or to.
Isn't that funny? That's kind of a pivot though, Mark, from where you were talking a couple of years ago, and all of us, quite honestly. And I had another private equity offer this year, and said no thanks. Craig had one. They're beating around his door, and I think, but yet years ago, I remember all of us sitting around. I forget, we were speaking. Maybe it was about even just last year. We were all speaking at that dental excellence conference or whatever it was.
Oh, in Orlando. Yeah, we were in Orlando.
Yeah. And we were kind of like, oh, cool. Like, it was still private equity, right? And now it's kind of like, I've kind of see what you guys have done to some of these practices. Like, I don't really want to partake in that,
And I got to be honest, like, that conversation in Orlando with you and Craig changed the way I was looking at things. It was a land grab, and it was a capital grab for a long time. And I was hot to trot. I was looking for it. And then once I got a couple of offers, I was like, man, that doesn't sound so super awesome. And I went pretty far down the road with some of these private equity companies. And I was like, man, I just feel yucky about this. It makes my stomach hurt to think about handing over part of my legacy to a bunch of bankers. Craig.
Well, I'm jumping out of my seat right now because let's face it, it's not just the reason why you feel yucky is because you're trading principal for dollars. And if there was an iconic DSO that ran it in such a way that you'd be proud and that not only would take your legacy but make it even better, you wouldn't feel so yucky. The problem is that, and let's not just talk about dentistry, but let's go up a layer or two and take a 30,000 foot view of PE in general. PE doesn't usually make things better, regardless of the industry. Forget about just dentistry. If you own it doesn't matter. They claim that they have this massive back office support and their know-how, but most sales right now are an act of resignation. It's like the doctor's frustrated. He has 7 or 10 or 15 locations. He's pulling the effort card, and it's an act of resignation. There's no one saying, I'm going to join with you in the hopes to make the entire organization, the profession better. There's nothing out there right now that says that. So it's an act of resignation. It's push your chips in and cash out, walk off the table, versus like, I'm going to pony my chips in with you, and together we're going to make this thing amazing. And that's what, when you ask Peter what fires him up, that's what fires me up, because I believe there's space in our industry to have that we could actually save our profession. And left alone, I see the writing on the wall that PE is actually hurting our profession.
I think too, Mark, to jump in, I think we have enough runway now that we've seen some of our colleagues who have taken the quote unquote liquidity event or an exit when they were promised, oh, you got this valuation, but yet they only saw half of that valuation, or 75%, because the rest of it was earmarked money or holdback or whatever. And so this romantic vision that we would have, like, 200%, of top line revenue would be the liquidity, the purchase price of your practice. We're saying that that's not happening, right? Because it's not a sustainable model. And so just like Craig is saying, the consolidation that's happening in the private equity space, it's, and that hope that we're going to centralize this and we're going to do this. And, they run into the whole host of problems that, like Craig said, there's actually a contraction of profitability. They run into a massive problem of actually
there's an expansion of value. So look, let's just rewind just for 1 second. All you have to do right now is aggregate practices, and just by the aggregation, never mind making it more profitable or driving same store sales growth or anything like that. If you aggregate, you're winning. So you take 100 $1 million practices, which might have been all bought for 4 and 5 EBITDA or 6 EBITDA. Suddenly that 100 practice portfolio of 1 million, I'm sorry?
6 EBITDA. They're not getting bought for. That's way too high.
So
3 to 4.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Whatever. At this point. So 3 to 4 EBITDA. Now you have this conglomerate of 100 $1 million geographically disparate practices, and suddenly that asset is worth now such an amazing multiple. By what virtue? The only virtue is expansion. It's just an aggregation. So I feel like that's putting a lot of pressure into dentistry. It's putting a lot of pressure onto the dentist. It's putting a lot of pressure into the profession. And I don't think it's all good. I don't think it's a good thing per se at this point.
So I've heard from a couple of friends that they were offered X number of dollars, 60% upfront in cash, 20% mandatory investment into the DSO, 20% withheld based on performance. So that's 60% of guaranteed money. So guess what that is? That's a 3x EBITDA. That's a guaranteed 3 times EBITDA, right? So
exactly.
All of a sudden it's like, holy shit, that's what I could have gotten without private equity.
Here's what's funny is
3 times EBITDA. If you're making more than 4 or 5% net on your practice, don't sell it.
You don't sell it for 3 times EBITDA. Yeah. Anyway, dude, I mean, I could go on and on forever. This is just the most fascinating topic for me. So I love talking to you guys, but we got an hour. So Craig, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Peter, and that is, what's your vision for 3 to 5? And what do you want your collective work in this field to look like at the end of your career? What's your legacy?
Well, if you would have asked me a year ago, I'm not sure I know, or I would have given you a different answer. So it's changed. So one thing I've learned about myself is I needed to be excited about something. I'm happiest when I'm like Peter, I'm happiest when I'm working towards something. And the last 10 years of my life have been working towards so many different things. I got a chance to develop a building and develop a concept and learn so much in leadership and get my butt kicked. And that shaped me in so many positive ways as well, even though I didn't really like the process.
Mm-hmm.
But now I look about, because I'm a third generation dentist, I always feel like my goal, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, is to revolutionize the profession. And I've always said that. It's like it was on one of my first, vision exercises I did back in 2008. And revolutionize the profession to me 7 years ago or 8 years ago meant to build this big dental hospital. Now, building 2 or 3 or 4 more of them doesn't really excite me at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
But helping dentistry as a whole in the context of how do we keep it for the dentist, by the dentist, and do what's right for patients, that gets me really, really excited. So when we talk about like saving the profession versus revolutionizing it, but saving it now, because I really feel it's under attack. I feel like dentistry is under attack. And I'm not saying corporate's bad. I don't want to say that, because corporate is oftentimes doing it a lot better than the average colleague that we have. They do it a lot better. Mm-hmm. I would probably rather go to the average corporate office for my care than the average dental office. So we've got a lot to learn from them, at the average, not any of our practices that probably are listeners, because they're hungry for learning. People that are listening to this podcast, they're a different breed. But most dentists stop their learning as soon as they left dental school. So I do believe that dentistry can be saved, and I want to play a massive part in that. For selfish reasons, because I want a better mousetrap for myself, and anything that I would want for myself, I want everybody else to have access to it too.
Awesome stuff. All right, so not so subtle segue into the reason I wanted you guys on this podcast in the first place, and that was to talk about your mutual labor of love, and that is the one thing that you guys, aside from the podcast, have recently done together, and that's the Bulletproof Practice book. Blood, sweat, and tears goes into writing a book, fellas. I've been there.
Oh my God.
Self-published book. Holy crap, Bola. It takes years off your life, I believe. So my hat's off to you for actually completing the project, for getting it done, for getting it out into the world, and getting that monkey off your back. Because when you decide that you're going to write a book, it sounds like a great idea.
Right.
And then you get about a quarter of the way in it, and you're like, ooh, I'm starting to lose a little steam here. You get 70% of the way through, and you're like, screw this. This is not worth whatever benefit is going to be on the other side of writing this book. And then you finish it, and you're like, hallelujah, thank God. So tell me about why you guys decided to write a book in the first place, and tell the audience about the book and why we should read it.
That was a funny conversation, Pete. The first call that we had, when the guy's like, why do you want to do this?
Yeah, so Mark, we had some help with a writer, essentially.
A ghostwriting service, yeah.
We weren't going to be the ones who were going to write where anyone would want to read it, because my writing style is literally, I don't know if I even passed that class in grammar school or high school or whatever, but it would have been horrible.
Book writing? I don't think that was in there.
It would have been horrible. So it's funny. We were tied up with the service and kind of going through the interview, and the guy was kind of betting, what do you want to do? What's it going to look like? Okay. At the end, what's the sales pitch? And like, what's the hook? What's the ringer?
No, what are you selling? He said.
What are you selling?
What are you guys selling? I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, what is this book? I mean, because everybody writes a book to sell something. I was like, oh, no, we're not selling anything. And it just floored him. Remember that, Pete?
Yeah. He kept going back, and he's like, no. I mean, like, what is this the lead gen for? What's this generating for you? And we were like, maybe we shouldn't write this.
Like, we just want to give back to the profession. He's like, and it was a long pause. And I remember him like, are you still there? He's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Like, he's like, we're gonna spend all this money publishing a book. And I joke around, if we sold like a copy to every dentist on the planet, we'd probably recoup our costs. Maybe not actually with Amazon fees.
Amazon. But really, Mark,
give back.
It really was, and I think it was to give back. And of course, there's a little bit of an ego aspect in there as well. You love to see, one of my dreams as a kid, I like to read books was like, I want to be an author one day. And so it checked the box for both of us, I think. And it was a nice collaboration because I wouldn't have done it by myself. It also was a chance for me to just offer different points of views. Like you've indicated on this podcast, Craig and I, we have similar points of views, but we also differ in certain aspects. So it gives a voice of both of us in the book. It did take a long time. I thought we'd bang it out in 10 weeks, which was what they promised. And it ended up taking more than 10 plus months, and a lot more time and everything. But at the end of the day, it was, do I regret it? Absolutely not. Like Craig said, will we ever make money from it? Nope. Not one bit. But I think it's cool because I'm proud of the content. And I think, you mentioned kind of a legacy thing. One day even my kids are looking back, they're like, look how cool this was, that, Dad did this kind of thing. I think these are the weird things that I think about, which I'm happy to have done. And if it helps out, literally, I know it sounds like a cliche, but if it helps out a handful of dentists that are just feeling frustrated or smothered or, hopeless in this confusing kind of times in dentistry, if it helped out a handful, then you know what? It was worth it.
Yeah, that's the same thing I always say. I couldn't agree with your comments more. I mean, obviously the ego component, but at the end of the day, if you help somebody along the way, that's huge. Simon Sinek has this great quote that I love. He says, "Be the leader you wish you had." And when Pete and I, and even you, Mark, when we were coming through the ranks, we didn't have anything. There was no resources. There was no podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, if we can help someone along the path, that's just huge. And I love seeing people kick ass. I love, meeting someone that saw me speak 5-7 years ago or whatever and say, because of that, I did this, or, it all comes back to you in some way. And I love that stuff, so.
Yeah. Totally. It's funny is I was listening to Gary Vee the other day, and a lot of his messages kind of repetitive, but he did have something really cool. Somebody asked him, why you do this? Why do you produce so many, videos for YouTube? Why do you put out 7 days a week for a podcast? He goes, very simple. He goes, I am speaking to my great-great-grandson right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, how you doing, great-great-grandson? Right now, they're listening to what I have to say. And there is an actual archive of my life and my thoughts when I was his age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually speaking to our great-great-grandkids. You guys are speaking to your great-great-grandkids in the book that you read, because you're going to be long gone, and there's going to be evidence that we actually walked the earth, besides a couple snapshots that people have in an old yellowing photo album, right? So the fact that you guys have actually put your thoughts on paper with no other motivation other than to make our profession a little bit better is very, very commendable. So I thank you guys both for that. I totally get it. I totally get it. So
and keeping with that though, Mark, too, there's two other things that I look at like with that, and I think this is good for us to share. Your Facebook page is that as well. So a lot of times I'll use my Facebook as somewhat of a digital diary if I have an inspiring thought or something like that, or if there's a digital diary for your kids to see as well of what you're going through at a certain time. So I always look at that. And the other thing that's kind of cool is I created email addresses for my two children when they're born, just Gmail addresses, and I periodically write them emails. And when they get old enough, I'll tell them the password if I can still remember it. But just telling them how I feel and how I think and what's going on.
That's pretty awesome. And that's a good idea.
That wasn't my idea, but I'm just giving it to you.
Yeah, whose idea was that?
There is one more thing.
I have no idea.
Dude, are you serious? All right.
Anyway. I have no idea. I learned a long time ago. I have no idea. It's definitely not mine though.
There is another thing that, there's no need to share it other than it's just a common thread that we all share, aside from being published and having our own podcasts and being multiple provider employers of multiple dental providers, which kind of gives us lots of things to talk about when we get around it with a few cocktails, and damn, can we get going once we're all together.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk just for a second about our mutual friend, Tom Zagainer, and the fact that we are all privileged enough to sit on the board of ambassadors for America's Best 401k. I saw a picture of you the other day, Craig, with Tony Robbins. You are actually his dentist, so that was pretty cool to see you guys together. And then you reposted that, Peter, because Tony was holding a copy of your book, The Bulletproof
Right.
Dental Practice. So not much better of an endorsement than that. But we are privileged enough to sit on this board together for this company that I believe really is doing our profession a lot of good, and that's America's Best 401k. So not intended to be a commercial. This is just totally something that we all share. Peter and Craig, I think that you guys introduced me to Tom in the first place. So I have to thank you for bringing me into the Tony Robbins sphere. So thank you very much for that. So what do you guys think about, the traditional financial retirement model versus these guys are doing over here?
Well, honestly, we vetted them pretty hard in terms of like looking at the business model. And what we found was that, when I looked at my 401k, right, and we really unpacked all the fees and all that stuff, it was really just crazy, Mark, the abuse that goes on in dentistry and 401ks. So when they came along and they offered a plan in a very transparent way, they were very transparent about their fees and like, here's what we're going to make. I think dentists get hosed. We get hosed on things like 401ks. We get hosed on whole life insurance policies. And I will be the victim. I will say that I fell on both of those, and I had to extract myself out of a bad 401k that was abusive in fees and massive 401k whole life policies, because I was sold a bill of goods, right? Because I wanted to trust the salesperson that I liked that came into my office that brought me donuts or whatever it was, my team, and I was too busy drilling, and so I was like, whatever, let me just sign. Cool, I trust you. Gone. And bad things happen when you do that. Most times.
Look at how upset we get when patients ask us questions, like bargain with us or don't trust us. We're offended. Like, Mrs. Jones, you need a crown, you have decay. Well, what do you mean I need a crown? I need a second opinion. We come from a place of like, we're taking the nervous care of patients. So we just assume that everybody operates by our rules, and they don't.
Right. Yeah.
So when AB 401k, America's Best 401k came along and really tried to poke holes in it, I really did, because I didn't want to pivot, number one, but really it was night and day. And I think they were cognizant of the abuse that was going on in dentistry, and I think they're being fair. And so just like you said in the first of our call, Mark, everyone has to win in a scenario, right? The company, everyone has to win. And in my previous arrangements, I was not winning, right? Yeah. And so with them, they're just fair and honest, and I really dig them. So yeah, I'm honored to be on the board.
It's funny because I have a great friend, somebody that I trust very, very much, that wasn't attempting to take advantage of me. She just had her standard fees that her company charged, and she was helping me to try to get the best returns in the mutual funds that she was putting us into. And I just I played her, a podcast where I interviewed Tom, and where I interviewed a couple other people that were talking about excessive fees in 401ks. And she's like, I don't really have much to say about that other than this is our model and this is how much they charge. And you got to pay the people that are managing your accounts. And with all due respect, I had to leave her with all due respect. Our membership is still totally intact. It is all good. And she's like, hey, it's all good. This has nothing to do with our friendship. Thank God she was cool like that. But this is somebody that goes back with me literally like 25 years. Like, I've known her forever. And the amount of loyalty that we show people that bring us donuts and that we've known for 2 years and we've golfed with a couple times, and the amount of responsibility that we hand over to them, and the amount of a premium that we're willing to give them.
It's unrivaled in the business world.
This misplaced loyalty is crazy.
It's crazy.
Look at our rules. I mean, we deal with patients. We deal with people who are patients for 20 years. So
right.
That's what we're used to. Like, lawyers are always looking for what could go wrong. We're always looking for preservation and loyalty of relationships, and we get preyed upon. And to her defense, though, your friend, she's doing what's called the suitability standard. That's the legal body that regulates what she can charge and what she does. So the suitability standard says as long as you're not screwing people over more than the average person, that's suitable.
Yeah.
And if you work for UBS or Merrill Lynch or one of those companies, that's what you sell. And she doesn't believe she's doing anything bad for you.
Exactly right. From her perspective and from her company's perspective, it's a fair margin, right?
Yeah.
From our perspective, there's a lot of alternatives that we don't even know about. So that's what I like so much about, having options out there. Once again, not intended to be a commercial, but fun that's another thing that we all share together.
But it does fit into what we were talking about, like, doing good in dentistry. The book was an altruism. Craig's legacy would like to be helping others. And so I think it fits, Mark. I don't think it's that big of a segue into AB 401k, because that's a big aspect. That's a big part of our master plan is our retirement plan, right? So I think it serves the industry for them to bring awareness to that, to be like, at least just let them discover the dang fees. Like, even if you're not going to pivot, just know, just be aware, pull your head out of the sand, like I should have done 10 years ago. Pull your head out of the sand and look around and be like, let me actually uncover my fees here. Yep. And so I think you just owe yourself and your practice from a fiduciary duty kind of to uncover those fees and look at things.
Yeah, totally. So can you guys, before we sign off, first of all, I can't thank you guys enough for taking time, because I'm working today. Greg's sitting on a porch with an iced tea, and Peter's at his second home. So, so somebody's got to make the donuts, right? Somebody's got to be putting out content into the
Time
world.
to make the donuts, Mark. Time to make the donuts.
I can't thank you guys enough for being on with me today. Can you guys share with us? First of all, you guys got to make sure that you are tuning in to the Bulletproof podcast, one of my favorite dental podcasts, and I'm not just saying that because of the dichotomy, because of the two opposing viewpoints, but both super successful people in our profession, guys. See, and they have great guests. So make sure that you tune into the Bulletproof Dental Podcast. But let's give everybody the opportunity to grab a copy of your book, guys. What's the easiest way to do that?
Oh, you can just go to Amazon, I think, is the easiest way. You can order it direct, but just go to Amazon and type Bulletproof. Do you have to type in dental practice, Craig? Or just
no,
Bulletproof
you can either put in Boulden or Spodak or Bulletproof.
Put in Bulletproof Dental Practice Book or Bulletproof Practice Book.
Or either one of our last names.
You see, you can tell we're not trying to generate too many sales from this, right? Because we should have had like a URL shortener. Just go to bulletproofbook.com and it'll forward you there. But like neither one of us have that going on. So everyone's versed at searching for what they need on Amazon at this point in time. So you will find it on Amazon. That's
the cool thing is when you guys start to get you probably have already started to get the statements from Amazon. So they take out their fee and then you get your little fee. You guys are probably rolling in it, right? My $6.52 royalty check that I get per book. Holy cow. That is
wait, you get $6? That's a lot. We get like
$6.52 per book sold.
We get 4
we
per
don't
book.
Get that.
You get 4?
You must have got grandfathered in since you've been such an author for so long.
$6.52. The cool thing is that when they roll in and they're from like different countries, you'll get like euros that are converted to dollars, and it shows you kind of where by the denominations that you get, where in the world they're coming from. So that's actually pretty cool. But
all of ours are coming from Atlanta, funny enough. I don't know what it is. A couple out of already.
Hey, Mark, I'm bound to be a bestseller whether I have to pay that way or not.
That's the whole idea, right? That's why you have all these properties, because you have pallets of books in your multiple properties.
I told you there was some ego component to it, right?
All kidding aside, I got to do the shameless plug. We got copies sent to us, and Kim and Peter's office said you have to send them back because Amazon couldn't fulfill them. So that's cool. It was cool. And we were the best seller for a minute there on Amazon, which is great. So
I think it was literally one minute, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
All good, man.
Craig got the screenshot. Craig got the screenshot grab, so we're all good, Mark.
You know what that means, though, for the second edition, which is what I did. For the second edition, you get to stamp it Amazon #1 bestseller, and you get that ribbon, and that is something nobody can ever take away. Even if you had that moniker for 1 hour, you will forever be a #1 Amazon bestseller.
Well, so 1 hour might have been pushing it. But.
And take a guess who's going to be writing the forward to the second edition.
I hope me.
Peter, I would like you too, but well, actually, yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll see our choices. But the big man himself told me, he's like, oh, you didn't tell me you wrote a book, blah, 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 blah.
He's talking about Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins, baby. So cool. Tom's a gainer. There is a little bit of a surprise for the summit. Tom was just at Tony's house filming some video, and there might be a little surprise for those attendees at the Dental Success Summit from the big man himself.
No way.
So yeah,
it might be
good for you, dude.
There might be. There may or may not be.
Yeah, don't overpromise and and under deliver, right? But just
Yeah.
cook. It could be. That'd be awesome,
There
Mark.
could be.
Congratulations. That's
something
cool.
fun. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. I just love hanging out with you. You enjoy the rest of your day in your second home, Peter, and on the deck of your beautiful house in Delray Beach there, Craig Spodak.
Airbnb, bro. Airbnb.
All right, gents. Thank you guys so much. I can't thank you enough for being here. We'll talk to you all very soon.
Thanks,
Ladies and
Mark.
gentlemen, Dr. Peter Boulden, Dr. Craig Spodak.